Excellent. Yeah.
All right. So let's go to. So it looks like it's streaming on YouTube and Facebook now.
Okay.
And I don't know if anyone's here. I can. Let's see if it's working.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, it says it's live now.
I feel vitalized.
So that's fun. So what should we talk about? I don't even know. I've never done a live stream. I know what to talk about.
Okay.
I know what to talk about. So your name has like 100 letters after it.
Oh, right.
So
yeah, not 100. Yeah.
so the PhD is
Yeah.
in neuropsychology.
No, it's in clinical psychology.
Clinical psychology.
Yeah.
I wrote neuropsychological assessment and consultation.
Yes, but PhD itself, I thought we were going to go through all the letters because it'll tell the story. So
Yeah,
the
okay.
PhD is in clinical psychology, and I'm licensed as a clinical psychologist. You don't get licensed as a neuropsychologist, and you don't get a PhD in neuropsychology. You get people who are neuropsychologists are psychologists by training, and then we specialize. It's kind of like a a fellowship or residency or something for physicians.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's a 2-year. So it's clinical, a PhD in clinical psychology, and then 2 additional years of training in brain behavior relationships and supervised experience in that as well, like practicum.
Wow. That's a lot of work. Where did you go for that?
I went to California School of Professional Psychology for my PhD, and then I did my neuropsychology training through the Fielding Institute. But the letters are board certification in neuropsychology, and in order to sit for the boards, you have to have done an accredited program in neuropsychology, and then you have to pass written exams, and then if you pass your written, you sit for an oral exam also. So the ABPdN, which is after the PhD, is a diplomate or board certification in pediatric neuropsychology from the American Board of Pediatric Neuropsychology. And then there's another board certification from the American Board of Professional Neuropsychology, and that's a more general boarding. So it's board. This is a kind of a fascinating fact for a live stream. You can theoretically call yourself a neuropsychologist in every state but Louisiana without going through training to actually do the work. And if you're a psychologist, you can buy all the tests, the neuropsychological tests. So people do the tests and they can score them, that's not so hard. And then they come up with these results and they call it a neuropsychological assessment. But really the authority doesn't lie within the tests. I had a wonderful mentor who said, the tests make neuropsychological testing kind of efficient, but if you know what you're doing, you should be able to do the whole evaluation with a ball and a stick. So it isn't about, tests are good and, the scores are interesting, but you have to know what contributes to them. The qualitative observations of how somebody gets to a score can often tell you more than the score itself. Particularly if somebody gets a 0 on something, there's lots of ways to get things wrong or not get credit. And, you want an example?
Sure.
Okay.
Nothing confidential because,
No. If I don't know, frankly, you don't get the letters after your name if you don't have the judgment that would let you know that ahead of time. So, So a recent matter, there was a young man, and I had, there were some academic questions. So I gave him, he's in high school, so I gave him a test of, among other things, reading comprehension, kind of like any old standardized test where, you, like when you were in high school, right? You read the passage, you answer the questions, you go on to the next one. It's a self-administered thing, but somebody is taking it in my office. So this young man started to take the test, and then he started looking around, and he started doodling on the side, and kind of flicking his fingers, and he ended up just not attending to the thing for a long time. And the nature of this test isn't that I can say in the middle of it, hey, by the way, you might want to get back to the test. So I'm thinking, okay, and then I gave him another version of it with extended time. No difference. So I thought, if you were to look at his scores on this reading comprehension test, it would look like he had dreadful reading comprehension. But I didn't think he had dreadful reading comprehension. So I gave him a different test of reading comprehension, which was more interactive, where he was reading a story that was on on a flip book. And then after he read it, I would ask him questions about it. Great reading comprehension. If you just give tests and interpret scores, however, you would give him that other test, you look at the score and say, he's got a reading disorder. But that really wasn't what that bad score was reflecting. That bad score wasn't reflecting his actual capacity for reading. It was an artifact of other aspects of that particular task. This guy needs constant interaction to keep him focused and from going off in his own mind to the places that he goes.
Interesting.
It's really interesting.
Huh.
Yeah. It's like solving mysteries, or puzzles. That's what I love about what I do. People come in and there's I think of it like a math problem. You come in and we have the answer on the other side of the equal sign, which is why you're there. So-and-so is having trouble with reading, and then there are the social problems, whatever the thing is or things are that people present with. That's what we're there to understand. And my job is to clarify what's driving them. And then only really, well, clinically anyway, not my forensic work, but to figure out then what to do to make it better. Forensically, that isn't always the main question. It's more, how do we understand what's presenting? And then there can be a variety of questions associated with that, like what are the damages and how much of this is, pre-existing relative to whatever happened.
And that's for testifying as an expert in a lawsuit.
Yeah, that's not even testifying necessarily, just being retained.
Or evaluating it, consulting with the lawyers, like helping them manage their case.
Understand them.
Yeah.
Here's what here's what's going on with your case. Here's what happened. Here's what you can see. Now you know how to go negotiate and try to keep it out of court. If it's a living, I also do the COVID after death work. It's all solving puzzles though. It's figuring stuff out. It's a lot of fun.
Is that a large portion of what you do is expert witness work?
It's increasing in proportion for me because I've been doing it since in a continuous way since 2006. But initially it was a tiny, tiny part of my practice, and it's more and more. It used to last a couple of years, maybe 50% or so. Now with COVID, more than that. But that's just the last few months. Because I'm not going in and testing anybody, but some of the forensic work is work that's done, like reviewing records and interviewing people on the phone or things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing with in the world of being a lawyer in a COVID environment?
Not bad. We're pretty busy, even though the courts are closed. There's still a lot to do.
Yeah.
And we're still getting new cases. interesting cases, and yeah, so I'm surprised, but it's not bad. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah. What do you like best about what you do? Am I allowed to ask you questions, or is this like an interview?
No, this isn't an interview. This is a fireside chat. So it's just a
Good.
hangout. We could talk about movies or sports too. Although
Okay.
won't know anything about sports, but
Then both of us, that would be a funny conversation.
yeah. Actually, what some of my favorite issues to deal with as a lawyer. I love dealing with legal ethics, which is why I started my my YouTube channel, is to talk about a lot about legal ethics and good practice tips to help young lawyers who, I think especially now, really need help, because it's law is not how it was traditionally. You're not going to have a lot of access to mentors right out of law school. You might be forced to start your own practice. Instead of Lee and I, we chose to start our own practice, but I think a lot of people are going to be forced to, and they won't know where to start.
Why do you think they'll be forced to?
I don't think that the law firms are looking to hire new lawyers anymore. I could be wrong. This is just, speculation. But lawyers are so much more efficient now than they used to be. Way back in high school, so way long ago, I think it was a summer. I mean, this had to be at least 20 years ago. I did a summer at a law firm, a big law firm, just as I just wanted a job over the summer, wanted some experience, and they still had a word processing department. So the lawyers some of them were doing their own work, and this was probably around the year, maybe I wasn't in high school. I think I was in high school. It had to be like 1997, around there. Some of them were typing, but a lot of them were still...
I remember typewriters. Yeah.
Yeah, they would dictate and then send the dictation down to a floor. There was an entire floor of people that were word processing, and just entering and typing. And I know a lot of lawyers, even when I started, a lot of lawyers were still using that system where they would dictate and give it to a paralegal or a secretary, or, as they modernized, they would do it electronically. So they'd email it to someone, who knows where they're working, who would then type up the motion or the letter. It would come back, and the lawyer would review it and maybe redline it. Back in the day when they'd use a red pen. Yeah. Although they say green is better if you're going to do that.
I like green. Yeah.
So the old practice was to have someone type it up, they give it back to you, redline it, you give it back, they make the changes, they give it back, you make changes. And I type like 90 words a minute with 99% accuracy.
Wow.
And so it is faster for me. By far. It's got to be 10 times faster for me to just do it, make the changes in logic, and if I need more research, I'll just do it at the same time and incorporate it, or keep a list of what I need to dig into, or arguments I need to flesh out, and just do it all myself.
It's all part of the whole rhythm and procedure that you're accustomed to, right?
Yeah.
Like this is how you think.
Exactly.
It's like yeah.
And I think actually, I don't know neurologically, for me, I couldn't think right if I had to dictate and wait. Like, that would mess up my process. But
Procedure, right.
Yeah, but I bet you the lawyers that did it that way, I think that, their work work product was probably as good as any work product. It probably didn't affect the actual quality unless it just took up more time, so they couldn't do as much research. Maybe that affected the end quality. I don't know. But for me, it's just so much faster that and so much of the outcome of a lawsuit, the types of lawsuits that we do, so much of it comes down to budget. And if we can move it forward and take it to trial at a lower budget than the other side, then the other side will either want to settle on more favorable terms, or will be more prepared for trial.
Right. No, it's so funny. There's so many different axes that turn in the law about it. It's like chess. People trying to figure out, well, what's this motive and how strong is it, and what's the opportunity cost there? Like, it's so many different things. What are the facts of the case? How likable are the people involved? I think that's one of the things that appeals to me about legal work, is all those different variables. That is that what I look like on your screen? I look like a claymation figure. Like,
no, I think it looks good.
No, it looks like it doesn't what I'm seeing. Actually, it just looks like whereas maybe there's like 100 frames a second in
all
ordinary back and forth, it's doing about like 10. No, maybe, but maybe that's just how it looks on my screen of your screen.
I think that might be it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, oh, Pokey.
I wonder if the music is playing. You probably can't hear the music because you're getting the audio.
I can't. No, I can't hear the music.
I should ask Lee. Lee? Yeah. Can you go onto my YouTube and see if the music is playing? Sure. Although it's in between the music. The music has... You could do it. Actually, Dana, if you want to go onto my YouTube channel and...
I don't want to do anything any more complicated than this. Like, I'll go on it later. But, no, I don't want to do another technical thing.
Yeah, there's music and fire.
There's music and fire.
What music is playing?
It's like some nice little classical music.
Oh,
Yeah.
We should be having sherry.
I know. I should. I was thinking in the future I'll add like maybe little Easter eggs in the image, like a cat running across the screen or something.
Easter egg? Is that like...
yeah, it's like little... Yeah, that was Lee's idea. That, like little like hidden gems.
Oh, like where's Waldo?
I should add Waldo.
Huh.
I don't write under the chair.
I have a question for you, in going back to what we were talking about. I'm older than you are. When you were in school, were you already writing on computers?
Yes.
Okay. So I am of the day where I had a typewriter. and I was very obsessive about structure. And I remember making outlines before I would type things up where it would be like Roman numeral 1, A, 1, 2, B, 1, 2, A, B, like to clarify, like writing, because then when you sat down and you actually typed it, you couldn't go, oh, wait, I'm going to go back like a paragraph and add this, or, I'll just get that. That was it, right? And if you were going to retype it, you had to retype the whole thing. And I have to tell you, I think I was more efficient doing it that way. Because there's something about the computer that, first of all, wherever you are, you're not kind of, you don't have this many pages to my left and I've still got this much paper left. So there's this kind of, visceral kind of like sensory thing. But there's like too many options that... for how many different ways you can come back and change it, or I'll come back to this. I was, I think, better off in the olden days, though, I've adapted. But I think I would be more efficient if I had to commit something
permanently in the first try.
And, if the effort required to revise it would be so much different. And I mean, I was a writer. I wrote a lot, but
Yeah.
and then I remember computers. The advent of that. I'm just aware of the difference.
I did have a typewriter when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know if it was a new one, but you could hit like the backspace and it had whiteout built into it, so it would go back and it would go.
Selectric. It was a Selectric, right? An IBM Selectric.
Oh, I don't know the brand.
I had a Smith Corona where if you made a mistake, you would put this cartridge, instead of having to thread this thing. This was really like, I remember getting this. I was so excited. I was writing a term paper in high school, and I was going to get a new typewriter. I was thinking, what is it about people that make you want to go back, like when your grandparents say, I remember when. Because here we are going, I remember when. But anyway, so you could swap out the cartridge for the correction cartridge. So you could go back, and then just type those letters, and then you'd swap it out again. And that was like light years beyond having to actually go paint, your whiteout in.
And then wait for it to dry.
And yeah, or not if you're a little impatient. Right? Yeah. So I've been thinking about. It doesn't all have to be about work, except of course, it kind of all is about work right now. But recently I've taken on. I do matters where complex probate matters, where there's a question of undue influence and capacity and post-death, and they are so complicated. I mean, because anybody who's bringing forward a case like this, the estate is substantial. So, so the players, they're so complicated. They're really interesting because you have to get you have to understand all of the different people in the family or in the business, all of the different things and how they interact, and then figure out where there might be sources of information or who you could talk to. But I started 3 of them within a short period of, like, within the same week and a half. And, these will involve hours of interviewing people. So here's my analogy in terms of like why I don't want to do anything else on the computer right now. My head is super. It's kind of like if you started watching Breaking Bad and you started with the 6th episode, because these aren't linear. Okay. You start watching Breaking Bad, you start with the 6th episode, you watch episode 6, episode 9, then you start watching Ozark in the 2nd season. And you watch a couple episodes of that, you go back to Breaking Bad for another episode, and then you begin The Americans, and you start that somewhere. There's so many different storylines all at the same time and different characters. So that's been my last week and a half is I mean, you just know in the beginning of these things that you just have to get in and start asking, but to have 3 of them within a short period of time, gathering all this stuff is very, a very unusual experience. So that's my best analogy for it.
Interesting. A lawsuit is often like that.
What's your experience?
You're often, you don't have the full story. You have to piece together the story. And even though your client is telling you the full story, it's from their perspective. And there's always, it's not that someone else has another version of the story, but everyone that interacts in, if you think of going back to like a TV show or a movie, let's do a movie. So we watch the movie timeline, right? Just from start to finish, we watch the movie. But each of those characters has their own perspective and their own intersection with that story. Mm-hmm. And so it's piecing together everyone's perspective so that you can get so that you can tell that story.
It sounds like a dimensional understanding of everyone's perspective and how they all interact.
Yeah, and that's what I love that aspect of litigation.
It's a deep dive, isn't it?
And I also love we have a case now that's very interesting. um, that is up against a government entity,
Mm-hmm.
and I love going up against the government because you know.
You know, the bots are watching, right?
Yeah.
You can flag.
Yeah. And I wouldn't mind working for the government either, but a lot of times people forget that a government agency or a business, if you're up against a business or representing a business, it's made up of people. The decisions aren't made by the government. The decisions aren't made by that corporation, right? The decision or that insurance company or whatever people want to point to, that your mind thinks of as an entity, as its own living thing, and the law treats as its own separate living thing. But it's all the decisions are made up by people.
Each of whom has a history and a family and
right,
a life story. Yeah.
And so I find those cases to be very interesting.
That's great. So you're thinking yes, this is the government, but it isn't. Let's find how this decision ended up getting made. Well, don't you have the experience? I mean, even when you call a customer service thing, you can really influence the outcome based on how you interact. Sometimes not. And those are the ones where you have to, I got disconnected. But it's so that if you can connect with somebody and they have like rooting interest in you, like they want you to succeed, or you're kind to them, or or call them by name. I mean, there's so many different ways to create a better outcome. And in fact, I think we do it unconsciously, because the people who are always irritated and like this is then they end up like alienating the people and having continued experiences of this just sucks.
Right.
Because without recognizing, but if you kind of go into it with a little bit of sense of humor, or if you can find that you think this is going to work, you see other opportunities in it.
Right. But those people have they have lives. Maybe they have bad days, and they have
right. Or the other thing that's amazing, I think it's always interesting to look at the dynamic balance between responsibility and authority. And when that's out of balance, it's a bad thing. For example, the people that you have to get your prescriptions from behind the counter at CVS, they have no authority at all. Like, they're just, you got all these things that are interfering with you getting what you need. You get to the thing, and I think that would be a very high stress occupation, because they end up, having a bunch of responsibility and no authority.
Yeah.
It's a terrible balance, or out of balance thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we see that now, right? With the protests in Minneapolis and everywhere,
Right.
and you could see it in that. I don't know if you watched the video. There was video of the I don't know if it would be an arrest or an attempted arrest. I mean,
God, I did.
Call it
awful. I did, yes.
But you could see it in one of the officers standing by when people were saying, hey, this guy can't breathe, do something. They were talking to the other officer, and you kind of, the guy, he's a police officer. He kind of wasn't sure what to do. Does he go, he's got his teammate, right? They're all part of the team, so there's that culture of being part of the team. Does he go and help the person that's pinned to the ground and can't breathe, or does he stay and keep the crowd back? Like, I think he was in a very difficult situation. And I think you could kind of see it in that video that he wasn't.
I think, yeah, you saw more of the video than I did. I just saw a bit of it on the news last night. They said, we're just going to show you a small amount of this. It's very disturbing. So I didn't see, I probably saw about 5 seconds of it, which was, but that's interesting what you're observing, right? Like, do you have your own mind? Who are you in a moment like this, in terms of the decision that you make?
Yeah, and then what does the crowd do? There was a crowd. There were, judging from the video, at least 3-4 people that were there, all saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And what do you do if you're part of that crowd? You can't. Do you try to run over and push the officer off? But then you're gonna get shot or arrested or who knows what.
And the other part of this is, these are like fight-flight moments. Like people sitting around with good executive function in that moment going, let's see, what might I do? Perhaps I could say to the officer, we are filming you. And, with the benefit of being able to sit here, what would have been the way to intervene that could have created a change, maybe. But that part, it's not, it's a high arousal moment. You don't have access to all that in that moment. So primitively, who are you? Like, what's your instinct?
Yeah. So it's, luckily it was all filmed, so people, so the situation is there, the evidence is there.
Right. Right. God, it's so much ugly. There's so much ugly. But there it is. I just wonder how, sometimes I watch two different, I'll tune into like MSNBC and then Fox. And I say, how could you take the same thing and make it into something else? And it's amazing. I hadn't addressed this particular thing about how this is being spun, but I do recall going on Fox and seeing that they had it was when the beaches were crowded in Florida initially, and that people were saying you can't do this, and Fox was saying that they were using special cameras with lenses that made it look like the beaches were crowded. And I thought, why wouldn't you have thought of that? Like how far, like why? Why would somebody use a lens to make, it was so weird. But to see, like, at the same time, okay, like, I'm curious, what is it that people are believing that is so different than what other people are believing? I feel like the current political climate, there's like a referendum on reality. Which one do you want? Okay. So I don't know how I'm spinning this event of tragic thing.
Yeah. But how much of your PhD and your schooling was devoted to decision making? Because people that like decision making is such an interesting topic. How people make their decisions, and they always make it. They don't even realize it, but they make it emotionally, and they make their decision first, and then they justify it with logic. And it's so interesting how the brain works. And that's evolutionary, that you're designed to, I don't know, it's so interesting. I don't know if...
No, tell me what you're referencing. Like, because, we have different overrides for like, hold on a second, let me think about this and figure things out versus responding immediately.
Yeah, I don't know if I was referencing anything in particular. It's just I've
You were just repeating something I said to you.
Lee thinks I'm just repeating something she said, which is probably true. But I'm sure I've read stuff about it as well.
It sounds familiar. I don't know that everything is that way, but the other part of it is that even when we're like, I'm just going to consciously reason this through, we've got all these processes that are always going on, that are like background processing, that we're not consciously driving, that give us a lot of information about how to, what to do in a given situation. Like I'll tell you a little bit about the cerebellum.
Is that the reptile brain?
That's that. It looks like it's
that the medulla
in the back. It's part of that reptilian brain. And so the cerebellum is about refining. It's about many things. It's about how we do things and refining the rate, the rhythm, and the force. Okay, this next minute you're gonna be like, this is kind of making sense, but then it's gonna be like the aha moment. Okay, so what do I mean? Your cerebellum is all about rate, rhythm, and force. So if you go to your neurologist and they think that you might have a cerebellar problem, one thing that he or she might do is say, touch my finger, right? And they'll move the finger and you'll be, so you'll be either touching the finger. Yeah, there you go, touch my finger, right? Okay, so is it a smoothly coordinated sequence of the rate, rhythm, and force? Is it like this? Or is it a series of approximations to get to the goal, right? We call it intention tremor, but it's really a failure of rhythmicity and rate. The other thing is, do you get there, or do you overshoot it, or undershoot it? And the way your cerebellum actually will learn to do this, you think of it like an external hard drive that's storing a memory of every experience you've had in kind and brings it to your present moment and uses all of that previous experience to predict how to do it now. So here's the kind of aha moment, right? And this all happens, it's all just, you're constantly refining, so you know how much rate, rhythm, force, how to engage. So the first time you picked up a plastic beer mug, what happened? Whoa, right? Too much force. Because you don't, new plastic, it was all glass. So inside voice, outside voice, all these things. So your cerebellum is always encoding and predicting and informing you in ways that are below conscious awareness. So this has some bearing on decision making. Or you can talk about an unconscious mind also that brings so much more than you even know you're bringing to something to help you make a decision. There's that, blink, right? How do radiologists know if, like an experienced radiologist looks at a scan for a second and goes, that's bad, right? Decision making based on accumulated experience that becomes refined, and you don't even have to consciously think about certain things.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's all controlled by the cerebellum.
Well, your cerebellum, the rate, rhythm, force thing is really interesting because it's the fluid exchange of social interaction. Cerebellum is very preferentially or disproportionately implicated in autism spectrum disorders, for which the prosody of speech can be kind of off the rhythm of speaking, and getting too close to somebody. How do we know implicitly how close to get to somebody? Inside voice, outside voice, the disproportionate response to different sensations. And you don't have to be on the autism spectrum to have these variables in play. But those on the autism spectrum tends to be more and more extreme. But if you're common for someone on the autism spectrum to have an extraordinarily high pain threshold, and at the same time to be intolerant completely of a light touch. So it doesn't have to do with over-responsive or too much, overshooting or undershooting. It has to do with disproportionate responses. So you can over-respond to things that might seem trivial, or under-respond to things that are pretty significant if you're comparing that to how most people do things. Um,
Is it
yeah.
involved with muscle memory? Like if you're learning a sport or an instrument?
Like, why can Michael Jordan hit a free throw with his eyes closed?
Yeah.
Michael Jordan? No, it's not. Yeah, and actually I taught on this, and I have a video of Michael Jordan hitting a free throw with his eyes closed.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's golf. It's it's your fluid sequences of movement. It's writing. When we use pens, those of us who still do, fluid sequences of letters and not pressing too hard and not pressing too soft and spacing the things. It's all these things that initially we have to concentrate on and consciously encode, and then over time they become automatic. They have to.
Yeah.
Because we can't do everything in first gear.
Yeah. No, I'm teaching myself piano, and
as a grown-up, how is it?
It's good. It's fine. I'm progressing. I've been practicing now, I think, a year and a half. I taught myself violin before, and
right.
And so it's I think that laid a really strong foundation for learning another instrument.
Yeah.
And one that I don't have to. With the violin, there's so much that goes into just making noise, making it make a sound and not a screech. With the piano, you don't have to worry about that. You have to worry about dynamics, the volume of it. How loud or soft the notes are. If you want to get very really proficient with it, then that.
Right.
But other than that, it's
which keys make which sound.
Yeah. But there's also with a violin, you're not, unless you're far advanced, which I never was. You're not worrying about chords,
right.
and multiple notes at once. So with the piano, like right now, I'm working on being able to make big jumps on the keyboard quickly. So go from far on the low notes to high notes, and it takes so much concentration to do that at first and hit the right notes. Mm-hmm. But you just do that over and over and over, and then your brain just does it.
That is exactly. It becomes automatic. It's like, right. And some people, by the way, make procedures more easily than others. So some people need fewer repetitions in order to get to that state of being fluid and not having to think about it so much and have it be so effort. It has effort and time, right? So the amount of both that you have to spend is finite. And so you're initially focusing, but then you become more fluid, and you may be somebody who makes procedures more easily.
Is that neuroplasticity?
No, it's more of like part of what ends up looking like. It's kind of just neuroplasticity just has to do with how much can your brain structure be influenced? How much can you repair? If you lose something, how flexible can your brain be to kind of compensate for it? This has more to do with kind of, some people just make procedures more easily than others, and it ends up informing aspects of personality or what you would think of as character, or all different kinds of attributions get made depending on who's making them and what the situation is. Some people are just slower to adapt when there are new things, and the people who are slower to make new procedures have a harder time giving up the ones they make to make new ones if you need to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So these are just kind of like, they're just certain things that are kind of how people are. We all come in with our own little thumbprint of how we develop and what is going to be easier for us or not so much. Yeah. I have a thought, but I won't share it because I'm not sure it's true. It's more of a hypothesis. goodness.
Huh. So, any plans for the rest of the night? Can't go anywhere, right?
I'll probably go out. I'm wearing long sleeves because I'm like at the computer in my head, and then I go outside and I do this like whole compulsive gardening thing. And I have a hillside full of succulents that I think might be aloe. They are like big starfish. They're really cool, and they've been there for like 20, I don't know how many years. You know, kind of accumulating along the side of the hill, and they've also been accumulating debris since a long time. So during the shelter at home, certain things catch my attention. This is also a little bit of a neurological style. Like when you see, like, how attentive to certain things, like once you have an itch, do you have to scratch it? And do you notice, like, so I notice stuff like this. So I noticed these, how debris filled. Actually, I've been noticing it for a while, and I notice it every time I walk by them, but I never have time to do anything about it. So one of the projects during the lockdown, I've been determined to kind of clean the debris out of these, and you can't. It's all like sticks and leaves, and then and you can't just go in with any kind of brush because these are succulents and they're delicate. So you have to go in with like tweezers and a chopstick and a toothbrush, and but then sometimes you get into the underside of them, and you can go in and take out a bunch of stuff under. So my arm, because sometimes I plan to do this and sometimes I walk by and I go, oh. So I've been, wait, I'll show you. Scratches all over my arm from impulsive, like, in the moment, I've got to do this. So I might do a little more of that tonight. That would be as far as my plans take me. I'm not going out anywhere.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you have anything planned? Are you?
No, Lee baked challah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, it came out really good.
Does it enter your place smell delicious?
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Oh, that's good. So what will you eat the challah with? Sounds like a little red meat. What will you eat the challah with?
She's making pizza as well.
Challah, you're eating challah with pizza?
Please brag about me properly.
She made sourdough pizza dough. She has a sourdough starter that she's cultivating, and
you have to make accommodations for that in your estate planning. You know. What happens to the sourdough starter?
It's like those birds that live for 100 years, or a tortoise. That you gotta
right,
make plans for it.
Right, it'll go beyond you. So sourdough pizza and challah, that sounds delicious. When you eat the challah, do you put anything on it, or do you just kind of?
Well, earlier when we tasted it, we dipped it in the pizza sauce that was boiling on the stove.
Wow.
And that was good.
And what will you put on? Maybe a more conventional question. What will you put on your pizza?
I don't know. Lee, what are you putting on the pizza?
I'm putting mushrooms, peppers, and Brussels sprouts on one of them that I marinated in all kinds of good stuff. And then Erica and Zach are putting some kind of turkey pepperoni on the other.
I want to come to your house. I'm so tired of
Am I
my.
participating? I don't know.
Lee says hi.
Hi!
Hi. Hi.
Um,
Yeah, that sounds so good.
Yeah.
I'm in a food rut.
Oh. You can learn baking like everyone else in the world. They seem to be buying up all the flour and all the yeast.
I
Please
do
clear your
bake.
audience that I baked before this shit.
I actually have baked. I'm just afraid if I have an entire loaf of challah, you know, I've been snacking enough. So I feel like part of my food rut is don't make things too interesting, because even the uninteresting things are pretty interesting now. Yeah. But it's kind of like when you go to Trader Joe's, for example, I think we all get into, and maybe this goes to it's the same conversation. It's about making procedures. What's familiar, your familiar Trader Joe's things. And so sometimes I go to Trader Joe's and you look at other people's baskets going, what else do people buy at Trader Joe's? Like, we've got our familiar stuff. And maybe there's people who are more adventuresome, but I usually kind of gravitate to similar things at Trader Joe's too.
Yeah, I think right, a lot of people end up eating the same thing over and over. I'll eat anything though, like really,
Yeah.
If I go to Trader Joe's and if I'm in charge of shopping, I'll just whatever I come across. Lee made it's almost like a Thai peanut noodle the other night. It was very good.
Yum.
Yeah, she says it's really easy to make. I don't know.
Yum.
I can't cook.
Peanut butter, sesame oil. Hold on. Peanut butter, sesame oil, chili garlic sauce, scallions, garlic. Am I close? Some kind of acid rice vinegar.
I don't know because I have headphones on and she can't hear you.
Oh no!
That sounded right. So.
Yeah. Yum.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll call it a night. That was almost an hour.
Isn't it amazing? That goes really fast.
Yeah.
So it's good to talk to you, and
yeah. We'll make plans to do it again. Not
see
live,
each other.
not live stream, yeah. You could take a look and watch it through on YouTube if you want.
I'll go to your channel.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then I'm sure we'll be in touch, and
Like, if you don't like it, I can take it down. You can let me know, and I'll take it down.
I'm sure it's fine. Have a good night. Enjoy your dinner.
You too. Good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.